All right, so let's make this cute snowman. So I'm going to start with a completely new canvas. And I want to show you how to change the colors of the canvas just in case you liked the Christmas theme. Just press here. This is the top color, which we can make a little reddish, something like that. And then the bottom color, we'll make a little greenish. So maybe something like that. So let's delete this sphere. So just tap on it, go to your scene menu here, and let's just hit delete. So one thing you should do is make sure, just go to this little camera here and make sure you're in orthographic view. And now let's add a new primitive, which is just a simple shape. So we'll tap here, add, and we'll add a box. So this is the snap cube. So this can just help us move our 3D sculpt around. Obviously, you can use your fingers to move it around as well. Zoom like this, and you can rotate with one finger. But if you want it to face you flat on, just hit front. So now let's use this little green sphere here. And this is part of our gizmo. And a gizmo is very simple. We have these spheres. This one will make it longer and shorter, up and down. Autosave, let's just put Snowman. Okay, so you can move it around. So this is your gizmo. It's essentially your controller for moving your 3D object around. I'm going to tap with two fingers just to go back to getting it perfect. So we can take this green sphere and we can make it smaller like this. And this is just going to be like a floor, the bottom part of our sculpt. So let's tap this sphere here and turn smooth shading off. So that's just going to create a simple box. So next, let's go to our scene menu and add a cylinder. So by default, you can see these options here. And you can take the green one and just put it up, just flush with the box. Let's move the whole thing down a little bit. Whoops. You can take the top one and bring it down to about here. And let's take the middle one and just bring it in like this. So we have something like that. And let's make this a little softer. So let's tap these three dots. Let's push the post subdivision up to around 3. And let's bring division X down. Let's see, maybe somewhere around there. So division X is 24. I think that looks nice and round. Tap front. And now we're going to validate. And validate just gives you certain options that you can't do after you validate. So there's certain things like we changed the topology, we changed the makeup of the cylinder to kind of give us this look. So there's just certain things that you can only do beforehand. And we're not going to get too much into it because it can be a little confusing. But yeah, anytime you want to use all the regular tools, you have to validate your primitive, which is your simple shape. And one of the other cool options that you can do with this is, let's say we wanted to make the bottom wider. Here's a place we can do that. So that's one very useful thing that you can only do before you validate. So let's go ahead and validate that. I think it looks good. So let's go to our scene. It's also very important to name your pieces, otherwise they'll get things can get very confusing. Let's long press this and move it up because the cylinder is over the box. So that just makes sense. And notice that the cylinder is in white type and this is in yellow. That's because the box we didn't validate. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's rename it. So tap these three dots, name, and floor. I'm just going to put FLR. So that's the floor. So we want to tap the cylinder, which we could have done here as well. Anytime you tap on them, that's the object that's selected. So for the cylinder, let's tap the three dots and let's name it Snow Base. Actually, let's put it Snow Ground. Okay, let's move it down a little bit. And you'll notice sometimes I tilt it and then I hit front, and it's just a habit so I can make sure that everything is facing me perfectly. I do that a lot. So let's go to our scene, add, and let's get crazy and add a UV sphere. So we'll take this bigger orange ring and we'll shrink it to maybe around there, something like that. And now let's move it up, make it a little smaller. So this is going to be the base of our snowman. So let's go ahead and validate this sphere, but we want to make the bottom flat. So there's a few ways to do it. You could try trimming option, but then it's not really right, because then it just goes down and then it's a sharp edge. So what we want to do is, let's tap the tools here. So you have your tool window and find move. So you notice up here there's symmetry, and symmetry can be very helpful because it just allows you to work in a symmetrical manner. So for example, if you tap the sphere, you see two red dots, and if you pull out, then you have the same thing happening on both sides. If I tap to undo and I turn that off, then you only have one. So of course you see this red line, and this corresponds, this is the symmetry option here. If you tap that, you'll see symmetry and planes, and then you'll see the red X. So the red X is this plane. And don't worry, I'm not going to go too much into symmetry because it can be very confusing. So I'm going to keep it light. So go down to the bottom and make sure you have show line. So this way you can always see your symmetry line. So we want to push it up. So let's tap symmetry. Let's use the move tool. And let's put the move tool up to about 300. So if you notice, we're only doing the left and right side, but since it's a sphere, we also want to do the front and the back. So if I was to do it now, it's only pretty much, I mean, it looks pretty good, but it's only doing the sides. So see how it's not even? So let's undo. And we also want the symmetry to go around this side. So then we have the front and the back as well. So let's go to symmetry and let's add Z. So we can't really see it because right now it's set to world. So world is like everything, not just the sphere. So let's go to symmetry and let's hit local. So now our symmetry is local to the sphere, meaning that all of the symmetry options are just going to calculate with the sphere, not the whole project. So think of the whole project as world, the sphere is local. Or this shape right now, any of these shapes can be local or world. Okay, so we go back to the sphere. Now we can see this blue line because our symmetry is localized to the sphere. So now when we use move and we push it up, it's going to be even. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So let's use our gizmo. So now we can move this straight down into our snow. And just notice that I don't really want there to be too much of a curve underneath here, so I'm going to move this down a little further. I think that's perfect. So this is going to be snow bottom. So we'll tap our scene, we'll go to our UV sphere, we'll press the 3 dots, name, snow bottom. So I'm going to long press and just move it above snow ground, so then we have everything in order. So next, let's clone this, and I'm just going to drag this one up, and I'm going to rename it Snow Top. So the gizmos are already going to be on this because we've selected it. So let's just take this green arrow and move up. Let's shrink it. Maybe something like that. And again, if you don't like the shape, you can always just use a new sphere. And also, don't worry about this. If you got them switched, you can just rename them, or you can just long press and switch them up. Okay, I think this looks pretty good. I think I want to make it a little bit, squish it a little bit more. I think that looks great. So now let's go to our scene, add a cylinder. Okay, so let's use our gizmo, and let's use the bigger orange ring. Just shrink it. Okay, so we want it probably around there. Let's use this green sphere to shrink it like this. And now let's move the arrow. This is going to be the scarf, so I think about there looks good. I'm going to go ahead and hit front. Okay, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger just so there's a little bit of a lip here where the top of the head is. So now let's tap this little hidden orange cylinder, and that will bring up these tools that we can use before we validate. So let's take this bottom orange one, and we can just move that out a little bit. Okay, I think that looks good. So, oops. So you can adjust your scarf to how high you want it, but I think something like that is perfect. So right now this is very sharp. Let's make it a bit softer. So let's tap these 3 dots. Let's put the post subdivision up to 2 and bring the division X down to okay, so we put post subdivision up 1 more to 3 and division X to 24. I think that looks nice and round and soft. But you notice that we lost those edges, so we might need to just adjust this ever so slightly, like so. This might be a little bit too much, but I think that's good. Okay, so I think that looks good for our scarf. So let's go ahead and validate. So once we validated, let's go to our scene and we'll rename cylinder. We'll tap these 3 dots, name, scarf. Okay, everything is still in order. That's great. Okay, so now let's make the eyes and the little mouth. So let's add, and we're going to add a sphere, but notice I have all of these checked. So essentially when I add the sphere, it's not going to add to world center, it's going to add on the gizmo. So I've touched the top of the head, so the gizmo is here. So back in our scene, if you go to add, I have all of these checked because I want this sphere to go right here. So let's stick with the UV sphere just for fun. Okay, so now you can see the huge sphere there. Let's go ahead and bring it forward. And then we can hit front again. We can shrink it with the bigger orange ring. Okay, let's move it up and over. And let's hit mirror. So now we have two spheres here, and these are going to be the eyes, obviously. So take this blue arrow, and you can move them back into the head like this. We can go ahead and hit front. So now it's a matter of you adjusting your shapes to be how you want them to look. You can make the eyes bigger, you can make them smaller, and obviously you can move them around, move their position around. I think I like something like this. I'm going to do something a little extra with my eyes. I'm going to tap on, let's go ahead and validate these spheres. So let's validate this. So now you see we have a mirror here, and then we have the UV sphere. It's really just one sphere, but we've added a mirror, so this one is actually being mirrored. So let's go to one of those spheres. Make sure that you're checked just the sphere, not both of them. And what I'm going to do is bring it out a little bit. I'm going to flatten it up. And then I'm going to use the gizmo to kind of get it flush to the surface. So I'll rotate it this way with the red ring, and maybe rotate it this way with the green ring. So they look almost more like buttons. I think that looks pretty good. So once you have your eyes in a place that you like them, we can go ahead and add the mouth. So in our scene, I'm just going to go to the top. That way when we add the shape, it's not going to go inside this mirror. So let's just hit add, and let's add a sphere. So let's go ahead and move it up using the gizmo. And I'll just move it forward, shrink it with the bigger orange ring. Now I know it might be confusing as to why I'm using a sphere for the mouth, but it'll make sense. I'll bring it a little bit closer to the face and just shrink it some more. But we want to make it into a longer, kind of elongated pill shape that has the rounded ends. So let's hit symmetry, and then we'll tap this vertex and put it to vertex. And this is really easy because we're automatically going to be on the X symmetry. See our little red line there? So now when we use this red arrow, it's going to pull this apart, like so. So once we have that, I'm going to go ahead and hit symmetry again. I'm going to tap vertex and just put it back to auto. That way everything is like it was. And there's one other tricky thing about doing shapes like this. If I was to try to move this now, like let's say I wanted to make it into a smirk, you can see it does this weird thing. So instead, make sure you're on the mouth, and let's voxel remesh. So I've pulled up here, this is a shortcut that I always do, so it's by habit. So let's go up to the top, and we'll tap here. And of course, this might be, the icon might be different depending on what you were last using. But essentially we want to tap here where you see voxel, and then down here you see resolution. So this is the resolution of each shape. So we don't need it to be this high, so let's just tap here and put it to 150. And then let's hit remesh. Okay, so now we can go back to the move tool, back to the mouth. We can turn symmetry on if it's not, and then just push down a little bit from the top, and then you have a nice little smile. And also what I like to do is take the smooth tool and just kind of give it a nice smooth, just to kind of keep everything even. Okay, we'll go back to the front. We'll tap on the gizmo, and now you can place it on the face. That's quite big, so I'm going to use this to shrink it. Maybe I'll shrink it. Let's see. I'll flatten it up maybe. Oh, and there's another thing that I want to show you. So if you want to rotate it or maybe shrink it, you'll notice that the gizmo is not in the middle of the mouth. So just hit pivot. The middle is the pivot point. So just make sure you hit pivot, center, pivot, and it just resets the gizmo to be in the center of whatever your shape is. Okay, so we'll move it to the mouth, and I'm going to flatten it with this blue sphere, and then I'm going to rotate it a little bit so it's more in line with the face. But you'll notice that it's a little too flat, so I'm going to cheat and take the move tool. Let's hit solo down here. So I'm going to cheat. I'll make the move tool around 300, and I'm just going to push the back of this to make it a little more form-fitting. So when I hit solo, I can take the gizmo and just move it back, and it's a little more form-fitting. Constantly hitting undo by accident. I think I want to move it up. You can make it smaller. You can make it however you like. I think I like that. Okay, and here's a good place to save. It's always good to save manually often. So now let's add a little piece of the scarf coming out here. So we'll go to our scene. We'll add a box. And let's take our gizmo. So your gizmo might either be here or it might be hidden. Sometimes it's a little hard to see right here. So we'll tap the gizmo. We'll shrink it. Let's go ahead and move it over. And we'll use the red to kind of make it thinner, maybe around there. And maybe I'll make it a little bit shorter. And now let's use the arrows to kind of bring it around where it would be sticking out. So that's a little long. I'm going to make it a little shorter. Let's go ahead and turn this way. And let's make it a little bit shorter like this. I think that looks perfect. I'll make it a little thinner. So now we want to make this soft. So remember, we haven't validated. So we'll tap these three dots, post subdivision to 2, and then we'll bring the box topology down to maybe like 3. I think that works. So let's go ahead and validate. Okay, so now let's take the move tool, and remember we're on this little box. I'm going to tap symmetry and hit local. And you see that our line is kind of it's the wrong line, so let's tap symmetry again. We probably want Z. There we go. So all we did was move from world to local, and we changed from X to Z. And we have symmetry enabled. So now that we have this symmetry, we can push this just to give it a little bend. And then we can take our gizmo and we can move it in. We can tilt it with the blue ring until we have something like that. I think that looks pretty good. And of course you can adjust it and make it bigger or smaller as you like. Okay, I think that looks great. So let's go back to the scarf, because I don't really like the way this looks. So let's take drag, and let's put drag to maybe 120. So on the scarf, let's lift up here. Oh, let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's put it to like 200. We'll lift up here. Now let's spin it and let's lift up right here. And we can lift up a little bit in the middle. Oh, and I actually made a mistake. I had symmetry on, so I'm going to undo. I'm going to undo and turn off symmetry because I only want it to be on this side. So, and before when I had symmetry on, it was going up on that side too. So now I'll just do the same thing again, confidently knowing that symmetry is not on. Okay, looks good. You can take smooth and you can kind of give it a little bit of a smooth as well, just to make it a little more soft. I think that looks great. Okay, so now let's make his little hat. So let's tap on the head, scene. We'll add a sphere. And you know what? I want it to go on the gizmo, so I'm going to hit add. Oh, it is on gizmo. Add a sphere. It looks like it should be on the gizmo. There we go. Remember the hidden gizmo here? We'll shrink. And let's just move it up and shrink it. Maybe around there. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit validate. And what we want to do is we're going to use a radial. So radial is kind of like mirror. They're essentially repeaters. So if you look in your scene and you hit add, down here there's repeaters. So these are just options that facilitate taking one thing and then repeating it for other things, whether that be just a mirror, whether that be array, which is like things in a row, a curve, or a radial, which will make things go in a circle. Okay, so let's tap radial, and now we have our radial here. So let's go ahead and rename the red radial. Let's tap on the three dots. We'll rename the red radial hat cuff. You know what? I like hat puffs. All right, so let's go to the sphere. So make sure that they're not both selected. You just want the sphere. And let's scroll to the top and then just hit top. So we'll take this red arrow and we'll move it out. And see how there's 4 of them now. So in order to control how many things, how many shapes are repeated, that's where the red comes into play. And you have these options up here. And you see this green radial that's where it says 4. These other ones, they will make them, but in like a different orientation, so we don't need those. But we want to put a bunch more of these, so we'll just slide to the right. And maybe something like that is good. We'll add one more. We'll keep it at even 20. Okay, so again, this number is just going to give you more or less. We started with 4, and we're just going to raise it all the way to 20. So let's just leave them there for now. And let's actually hide them with these little eyes. So we'll just hide them for now. So let's go back to the head. We'll go to our scene. So we have snow top. Let's hit clone right here. And I'm just going to drag this one to the top. And I'm going to rename this beanie. So I'm going to move this up. And then I'm just going to trim it. So we'll take trim, rectangle, and then I'm going to start my rectangle down here. Everything in the white will be trimmed. So I think right about there is good. Okay, so now we have this piece. And this piece will be the beanie. So we can take the gizmo, and I'm going to go pivot, center, pivot, just to center our pivot point, and then use the orange ring to shrink it to maybe something like that. So let's go back to the scene, and let's show our little puffs again. Okay, so we can select them both and just bring them down. And I want to tap on the sphere and just use this red arrow and just bring it in a little bit more. I think that looks good. And of course, remember, you can still adjust the shape of these. You can make it taller, smaller. You can add an angle, something like that. That looks cute. So you can do a lot of fun things with these repeaters. Okay, I want to make this a little bit, or maybe a little bit taller. I think I like it the way it is. I think it looks good the way it is. Okay, I like those. Oops, still undoing by accident. Now remember, of course, you can use any shape for the hat. I'm just going for the straight beanie. So I'm going to take the hat puffs and just make sure I like them, make sure I don't want them smaller or anything. I think they're good. So I'm going to go ahead and validate these, join children, and then I'm going to take hat puffs, long press, and nestle it under beanie. So now you can take beanie and you can control where it's going to be. And the only thing I want to do now is maybe just make it a little bit higher on the head, like so. So let's go to our scene. Let's add another sphere. And let's go to Gizmo and shrink it. And let's take the red arrow and move it over. Okay, now I'll look to the side, and I want to shrink it this way. You can stretch it a little bit. So now just move it and then rotate it. I'm going to use this blue ring. Try not to use the gray ring. So I'm going to use the blue. Let's make it a little smaller, and then kind of move it here, something like that. And also I'm going to use the red ring, and I'm just going to tilt it backwards. Like so. I think that's cute. So now that we have that set, we can just hit mirror. Okay, and I actually just thought of something useful. Let's take this mirror and clone it. Let's take the top red one and rename it hat, ears. Let's take the bottom one and rename it hat, ear, puffs. So this is just a little bit extra. So all we did was clone this, and you can move it out a little bit and shrink it, and it kind of gives you that, you know, that little extra on the front of the ear, which is kind of cute. So I'm going to take both of these and validate, and then I'll take both of these and validate. So now all of these are together, and we can take this and nestle it under beanie, and take the hat, ear, puffs and nestle those under beanie. So let's take the beanie, and now let's figure out the position. I kind of like it to go a little bit further back, maybe tilt it a little bit. And if you want him to really be cool, you can give him a little bit of a tilt. Let's tap a line. So what a line does is it just changes the gizmo temporarily to the world origin, so that will always be up, so the gizmo won't change. And the only reason I'm doing that is so I can just tilt it and then move it to the side of his head, just to give him a little, depending on how cool your snowman is. I'll tap a line again. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save. Okay, so let's tap our little scarf, go to our scene, and let's name this scarf hang, and we can nestle that under scarf. So just long press and then nestle it under scarf. So now we can just take scarf, and the reason I'm nestling is because if you don't nestle them, they have different center points. So if you select them both, then it might not be directly in the center. And then if you try to rotate it, it's not going to be right. So that's why I take the scarf and I nestle it. That way I can just move the scarf and then it rotates. So we're just going to rotate that a little bit to the front, like so. So let's tap here, add, sphere, gizmo, we'll move it over, shrink, and then we can move it kind of in this area, like so. And I'm just going to use this blue to kind of shrink it, his little mitt. Maybe give it a little stretch. So I'm going to go ahead and validate that. And I want to take move and just give it a little bit more personality. So I'll just kind of drag it down a little bit, like so, and maybe make it a little bit thicker, just kind of moving it around with the move tool. Just make it a little bit thicker. Just giving it a little personality. So, okay, I like that. I think I want it a little smaller. So as I'm doing, you know, you can feel free to adjust your little characters as you see fit. I think that looks good. So I want to give them a little thumb. So all we have to do is hit clone. And let's move the clone out. We'll shrink it, move it up, and then we kind of just have to rotate it until it looks decent. If you really want to get crazy, you can just move things kind of loose with that little round piece there. Okay, I'm going to rotate it a little bit more. Make it a little thinner. What do we think? Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I like that. Okay, so we have these two spheres here. So in the scene, I have both of these which I'm just going to join together and rename mitts. So let's tap mitt. We'll go back to symmetry, world, and we'll tap mirror cube topology. And then yes. So let's add a few little details. Okay, so I'm going to go to the floor, add a sphere. Wait, gizmo, we can go ahead and validate it. I'm just going to shrink it and kind of put it in front of him. I'll shrink it some more, something like that. And now I'm going to take drag, and I'll just drag it to the floor like so. I'm just going to drag it next to him. And then I'm going to use flatten, and I'm just going to flatten parts of it. Like so. You can take the gizmo and hit clone and just slide it over, and then take the green ring and kind of rotate it just so it looks like a different shape. I'll make it smaller. Oops. And just use your arrows to bring it out a little bit more. I'll even flatten it this way, like so. You can always clone it. You want to add another one here, maybe something like that. Okay, I think he's looking great. All right, so let's have some fun coloring this, but first we're going to add in a background. This is strictly optional. You don't have to do this, but press here. And if you've downloaded the images, you can just go to reference image and then go to you can tap the image if there's something there, and then just find the image that you downloaded, the little scene, hit import, photos. Oh, and now you can find the little scene, add, and then you have your little scene behind you. So it'll probably be small. So just hit transform, and then you can make it big. So just make it so it kind of fills the screen like this. And see this little white bit? You want that to be right out of frame, like so. Then tap with one finger, and now we have a nice little backdrop. So first, let's make some more snow down here. So this is really easy, really simple. Let's just add a sphere. We'll hit our gizmo, and we want to bring the sphere down. Whoops. And we'll flatten it like that. And now just make it really big. And we'll flatten it a little bit more, and then we'll bring it down. So maybe right around there. So something like that I think is good. It doesn't have to be that long. You can do something like that. Okay, so now let's get a nice framing for our little snowman here. So maybe right around here is good. So once you have him positioned, hit the little camera button, hit add view. And I like to rename this, so I'll hit the little pencil and just call it 1. So now we have a nice view, so if we move it around and do things, we can always hit here, and then you can go right back to that view. Okay, so that's looking good. So the only other thing that I would say is maybe we want to add, let's say, another sphere. We can add another sphere here. We can make it small. We can sort of put it on the front of our snow. Maybe on the front here. So maybe just put it on the front of the snow. Like this. And then let's take our sphere and let's kind of move it so we know where it is. I think these are our, so this is the snow. Let's go ahead and rename that to snow. And this is just the snow, well, let's just call it round for now. Call it whatever. Okay, so let's go back to snow. Let's validate it. Let's validate this as well. And let's add another sphere. We'll zoom out a bit. And let's just move this sphere kind of in the backdrop behind our little snowman. Let's stretch it a little bit. Let's validate. And now let's just use move. And we can turn symmetry off. And you just want to kind of stretch it. Kind of stretch it around. And I would advise doing this to a couple other things as well. So when we go to our view, it's just going to add some nice depth. So I would say have fun with it. You can add some more snow, things like that. But be creative, see what you like, and always go back to the view. And you can take 4 fingers, and you can tap with 4 fingers, and you can kind of see what it looks like. Tap 4 fingers again. So now I want to take this, I'll validate it. I'll use move again, and I'll just make some more little snow puffs, things like that. Maybe I'll use drag to really get some. And drag is good to really, if you want to kind of pull these shapes out and get some interesting shapes, drag is really good for that. So once you have that, we'll go back to our view. That's great. And this is a little high. I'll just take move and kind of push that down a bit. Okay, nice. Okay, so we'll go back to our view. So at least now we have some snow. So let's go ahead and start coloring this rascal. So we have snow top, and this is snow bottom. So snow bottom and snow top. So we want to just select them both and hit join. And we can take his little mitts, his little hands, and let's just bring that up to, where was it? I think it's snow top. So we have snow top and we have those together. So let's tap this little cube type thing with a line through it. This is going to pop up. This is where you can choose your color. Oh, it looks like it's just the hands. Let's go ahead and make sure that we have both. So now you can choose your color. You can make him a gingerbread man if you want. And I kind of like the bluish snow. So I like the snow with a little bit of blue. Just a smidge though. Like hardly perceptible. Just a smidge. So for now, we'll go ahead and hit paint all. So that's going to paint everything. And you can also adjust the roughness if you want. I don't want it too glossy. I like it a bit with a little bit of roughness. Okay, so what colors do we want to do our little guy here? So maybe we'll make this, maybe we'll try to match the colors of the image. So maybe we want to try a nice blue like this. So we can hit paint all. We can tap this little thing and we can hit the color down here, hit paint all. And maybe with the hat we want, do we want a greenish hat or do we want a reddish hat? I think I like the reddish. Maybe something like there. We'll hit paint all. And for his ears, maybe we'll match the outer ears. Maybe we'll match that color, and this color can be maybe a greenish. Maybe like a Christmas green. I'll probably wind up changing these colors, but that's all right. Okay, so for the eyes, we can take the eyes. I like them, so I'm just going to go ahead and validate. We can rename it eyes. And everything's going to be colored pretty much the same way. You just tap here and then you figure out what color you want. Now, I was thinking originally black, but I don't know if I want it to be completely black. Maybe something like that. You can adjust the roughness here. So I kind of like a little bit of gloss for the eyes. And the mouth can be, should we make the mouth the same? Let's make the mouth the same as the eyes. So let's use the eyedropper. Tap on the eye. And we're still on the mouth. So now we can tap here. And then we can just hit paint all. And that matches. Okay. All right, so for this snow, I do want to match the colors, but let's add some light on this little character. Okay, so we have the environment here. So when you turn that off, you can see everything is completely black. And there's other environments. You can tap on the environment, and here's some of the included environments. And you can see that the environment does offer a lot of light and things like that. So that can be very useful sometimes. You can also rotate it to kind of get the light to look a certain way. Okay, I think I'm going to put it on like 300. I think that looks pretty good. I think that looks nice. Okay, so now let's go to back to our lighting setup. And we can add a light. Okay, that looks really nice. And I might want to add some blue to it. So this is a sunlight. So the sunlight is actually here. So we can take the gizmo, and it can be a little bit difficult to move around. So just hit align, and then slide it over, and then slide it up for now. So the light is actually pointing this way, and the only thing that will change that is if you rotate the gizmo. It doesn't matter where you place it. Rotating it will adjust this light, will change this light. So if you want to change the hue of the light, just tap here. And I think we want to maybe have it a little bit bluish. Let's see how that looks. I think that looks good and fitting. Okay, so let's take this and let's take move, and let's turn symmetry off. So now that we have all this snow here, I feel like it makes sense that we can just incorporate this into like a snowdrift kind of thing. So let's tap this little color thing. Let's grab our eyedropper, and let's get the color of him. Since this is the same snow, we'll tap here again and just hit paint all. We can do that for all of these snow banks. Let's go back to our camera view, make sure it's perfect. Even this one. So we'll hit paint all. And also these little snow balls here. Paint all. I think there's another one here. You can sort of move it out. Maybe stretch it a little bit. And then hit paint all. Okay, I think that looks great. Okay, so this, what did we want to make this? And you can have some fun. So we're going to make it, let's move this over so you can see what I'm doing here. So you can play around with these and turn the metalness up, and you'll really get a nice Christmassy look if you turn the metal up. You can turn the glossiness down, and then you really get some Christmassy ornaments. So then just hit paint all, and that looks great. So I'll tap the camera and go back to 1, and you can kind of see how it's looking. Okay, so let's add some warm lights over here because there's a lot of these warm lights. So let's go back to our lighting setup. So this is going to be our key light. So let's just hit this little pencil thing, the edit, and we'll just call that key. Let's add a light. Okay, and maybe we'll move it over. The line is still on, so we'll move this light over. And let's turn the intensity up. So let's tap this light. What color do we want to make it? Let's try a little warm. And let's try rotating it. We'll rotate it up. So you want to get it rotated so you see a little bit from behind the snowman. So something like that I think looks really good. And you can turn this up, and you can even see some on the snow here. I think that looks nice. It just gives it a nice rim or a nice edge lighting. So we'll go back to our lighting tab. We'll hit edit, and we'll name this one edge. So let's add another light, and maybe we'll want to change this one. Let's tap here. Let's change it to point light. Okay, so now let's slide it over. That's very bright. So we'll tap here. Maybe we want this warm. But we need to change the intensity, so let's just turn this down. Let's see where we want to put it. Gotta find a nice place for this light. I kind of like it over here. We might have to increase the intensity. I kind of like it over here. It makes it seem like there's a light over on this side, and that's where this warm light is coming from. So I like that. I think that looks good. Okay, so now we have one more light, and I think it might be nice to do this kind of light, but maybe on this side. So we'll go back to our lighting, we'll add another light, and by default it's a sunlight. We'll move it over here to the right with our gizmo, and let's make this really blue. Something like that. So one side is kind of bluish, one side is more of a warm color. Yeah, right there. So we get that nice blue right on the side. Yeah, I like that. And I am going to adjust one of the lights. I think I want this edge to be a little more warm. And let me just see if I want a little more on him. I turn the intensity down. Yeah, I might like that a little bit better. So I just kind of did the same thing, except this side is nice and warm. And do I want to play around with this light now? And there's a lot of things you can kind of mess with in here. It's kind of nice. That makes it a bit softer. I think I like it better over here. Yeah, so we'll keep it like that. And also, if we go back to the light for the environment, you can also make it a little bit brighter. So it's kind of nice if it's maybe a little bit brighter. So I really like this. I think it looks good. And lastly, let's play with our post process. Well, actually, it's not lastly. There's a bunch of stuff we can do, but I think this is a good place to chill for now. Let's make the hat. I forgot we didn't do the hat. So I like white, but maybe we want to. Is there any other color that might look nice there? Ooh, maybe like a yellow. That's kind of nice. it kind of matches the background a bit, and it kind of breaks it up. And there's something else that we can do also. We can take Snowtop and Mitts, and we can voxel remesh them together. So let's go here, voxel. So then let's put this up to like, let's do like 150 or 160 and remesh. Let's make sure if we go here, okay. Yeah, disregard that. Sometimes I do things automatically, but it's fine. So now we'll just use smooth and just smooth our snowman out. Now you can see the hands are together. You might have to spin it and smooth the back out as well. Okay, we'll go back to our view. And I think he looks great. Eyes they feel a little too glossy, so I'm just gonna match that color and just make them maybe a little more rough. Yeah, I like that better. And then the mouth, I'm going to do the same thing. Just make it a little more rough. Okay, that looks good. So next, post-process. So let's tap post-process and see what we got. It looks very, very bright. So let's turn tone mapping off. Because sometimes I have it on, but it looks like I have to bring the exposure down. You can mess with that if you dare. And put it back to its original, but that's still a bit too bright, actually. Put all that to its original. Neutral. Ooh, neutral actually looks good. Maybe up the saturation a bit. Looks really nice. Do we want to add a little exposure or less exposure? I think that looks really beautiful. Okay, so back here, so we have bloom. Blooms, we're not going to do much with bloom, I don't think. Ambient occlusion is like all these shadows and things like that. So make sure you have that on. And these are pretty good. If you want more, obviously you can add more, but then it might start to look a little strange. So we'll go back to, oh no, I have to put more. Probably right around there is good. So you can play with all these and kind of get it exactly how you want him to look. Okay, I usually have this on, I usually have this on. And then also depth of field. So that will give you a nice background blur. But just be careful because sometimes it doesn't blur right around the edges. So sometimes it won't look as nice. So you have to figure out if you actually want that or if you want to just leave it off. I think it looks fine with it off. Okay, so now our snowman looks really cute. We have everything, all of our settings are good here. We can go to this folder. I'm going to hit save. Then I'll scroll all the way down to render. And we'll do screen. And I'll export. And this number is the same number that you choose at the top of post-processing. The sample numbers. Looks great. Tap on the screen, go like this, and I'll just airdrop it to my computer. And there you have it. But yeah, it's almost Christmas time, and it's always great to just do a nice, fun Christmas themed tutorial. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Keep drawing, keep sculpting, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to go more in depth, then definitely check out my Skillshare classes where I am a top teacher. I have about 50 classes, both Procreate and Nomad Sculpt. I also have a few classes on Udemy, so if you want to learn more, or you just like my style, you like the way I teach, you want to support me, those are some other places that you can do it. Thanks again, keep drawing, keep sculpting. I'll see you all in the next video.